What's going on, everybody? It's Chris Wagner back again to do another Lawyer Reacts to Cops clips. I am an attorney in the Tampa Bay, St. Petersburg, Florida area. I specialize in doing car accidents and slip and falls, negligence, that kind of thing. But before I started doing all of that, about 10 years ago, when I first came out and became an attorney, I was a public defender for a few years and I ate and breathed criminal law. Cops was like my all day, every day. I've always liked cops, still like cops, but when I was a public defender, I didn't like cops because that was my job. So when I was off work, I didn't really want to do that. So without anything more, let's jump into it. Now, I haven't watched this, so
We
it's
just
just
got
going to be
dispatched
react.
to a suspicious vehicle call. One of the neighbors called in a motorhome and another car sitting in an abandoned parking lot. And they thought they saw drug activity.
All right, so there's a lot going on here. Police officers obviously get dispatched from the 911 operator. The 911 operator got a call from, it sounds like, people that are inside the camper or maybe some neighbors who are in a different camper as to suspicious activity in the white Chrysler LeBaron here. Sounds like there's also some suspicion of drug activity as well. Why is that important? It's important because it defines the parameters of what the investigation, the police who are responding to this call are going to be allowed to do. And quite frankly, based on that tip, there's going to be a lot that they're going to be allowed to do. Now, the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution allows all United States citizens to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures, which way back in the day would have meant that they would have to get a warrant. But over the years, over the decades, we've relaxed that. We, being the law, has relaxed that. And there's lots of exceptions to the warrant requirement. So, one of the exceptions is that if you are in a vehicle on the road, um, you do not have a reasonable expectation of privacy because you're out in the public sphere. And on top of that, in order for a police officer to do an investigation, they have to have a reasonable suspicion of criminal activity, which, based on the tip that was provided to them, they have reasonable suspicion, or maybe not reasonable, but they have a suspicion of drug activity, suspicious behavior of drug activity happening in and around a vehicle. Now, here's the thing: it's not in and of itself, it's not suspicious to park a car in a parking lot perpendicular to an RV. I mean, there could be an argument that that is suspicious, but it doesn't mean that you're necessarily doing anything illegal. So, coupled with the drug use, that does raise it up a little bit. But these police officers are going to be a little bit hemmed in, at least at first. It is problematic that the doors open. If I'm a police officer, I'm thinking what's going on inside. Obviously, chances are someone's going to be in the vehicle. Do they have a gun? Do they have a knife? Do they have a weapon of any kind? Or are they passed out in there? Who knows what's going on in there? So, when they approach, if I was them, I would be cautious because it would be a threat. But are they committing a crime? It remains unknown at this point.
Hey, you stay in the car, man. What?
We have permission to be here.
Do you?
Yes.
From who?
The people right there.
Who? What are the names of the people right there?
Ed and Alice.
Yeah? You got your ID on you?
Yeah.
Is there anybody in this here RV?
Yeah, a friend of mine.
Who's in there?
Rocky was in there.
Rocky.
Yeah.
Is that a woman or a man?
It's a woman.
Okay.
She's sleeping.
Is it your lady friend?
It's a friend.
Do you stay here with her?
No.
Okay. How'd this car get here?
Okay, so automatically I'm suspicious as to whether or not this guy actually knows this person. It's not over the years in my experience having represented guys like this. When you live this life where you're just kind of in cars like this, I mean, I don't know if he's homeless or not, but he probably is. He's probably living out of his car based off of what you can see there. They get good at dealing with police officers like this, and they can make up stories kind of on the fly like that. So I'm not saying that he's not telling the truth. I don't know right now, but my suspicion, and I would imagine this police officer is the same way, is that he's probably just making this up because he knows he looks suspicious. He's been in these situations before, and he's likely concocting what would be a legitimate explanation as to why he's there. Now, maybe he does know her. Maybe it's okay for him to be there, but we'll find out.
How'd this car get here?
Yeah, it didn't magically appear here.
You don't have a driver's license, so how'd the car get here?
I drove it.
Oh, okay.
Just a half block.
Half a block? Well, it's still driving, I guess.
I don't know what you're trying to do.
I'm just asking questions is all.
Well,
And so at this point, if I was his attorney, I would say you need to exercise your right to remain silent because this guy's investigating you and he's just looking for any reason that he needs to get you arrested and get your car towed out of this area because this guy is just looking for a reason to get rid of him. He doesn't like him. Call it good, bad, or ugly, call it what you will, but this cop is trying to get rid of this guy because it is sketchy what he's doing. But if his story is legit and he does know this lady, but if I recall correctly from the beginning, like the person who's in the RV called the police officers. So if that is the case, then he knows that this guy is lying. But right now he hasn't said anything that's necessarily an arrestable offense. Not having your driver's license when a police officer asks you for it might be a ticket, but it's not going to get you arrested.
stop it.
That's my job. Is to ask questions. We
I
have
brought her
neighbors
food and
neighbors calling saying that folks are over here not supposed to be parked here and they were dealing drugs. Are you dealing drugs?
No.
What's that white dusty substance on your pantaloons there?
All right. So this happens all the time. I'm not saying it's not drugs. Probably is drugs. I don't know. But the thing is like he's clearly not, and I mean this with all due respect, like he's not the cleanest guy. White dusty substance could be anything. It could be stuff from the top of his car, or like it could be just dust in the air. He could not have washed his pants for a long time. Maybe he is a construction guy and he deals with drywall, and so he's just got leftover drywall from working earlier that day. It could be a lot of different things, a lot of legitimate different things.
Right there. See where my flashlight is? There's like a white crystalline substance on your pants.
We've been eating.
Is that one
You've
speck,
been
two
eating food?
specks?
What
It's
food
weak.
has white crystal substance on it?
Salt is a white crystal substance. It's used in everything. Like this cop is being a little bit he's I know what he's doing. He's trying to get this guy to admit that he has drugs in the car, because that's the thing. This cop doesn't have a reason to search him yet, and he wants a reason to search through this car to look for drugs. That's what he's trying to find. That's the whole point right now.
I don't see it.
I don't see it. Well, that's the excuse I would use, I guess, if I was 5 and I
There's
was.
another person
You
in the
have a
car. I just
warrant?
realized that.
Excuse me?
Do you have a warrant?
I have a legal reason to be here. The
Fair-
fact that you're
that's
a
a fair
vehicle
question.
parked in a parking lot
We can-
with a closed business, and the neighbors called and said that they saw illegal drug activity.
The
So
owner
this
of
is
this
called-
whole lot.
I'll
said-
explain this to you. This is called a Terry stop. So I'm allowed to legally detain you, to ID you, and investigate criminal activity that appears to be afoot. So whose rig is this, Mike?
All right, so let's talk about Terry stop. It's been a while since I've thought about a Terry stop. So that is generally correct what he was just saying. And Terry is a very famous, Terry versus Ohio is a very famous Supreme Court case that came out in like the 50s or the 60s that was the preeminent and still is the preeminent case that allows for, or not even allows for, that governs when a police officer is able to stop somebody on the streets, do a frisk, do an investigation. And so if I recall correctly, in that case, in the Terry case, what happened was a cop was watching a couple of guys that were going by, I don't remember what kind of store it was, but some kind of department store, like a jewelry store or something like that. And he got a hunch. A cop's hunch. We see it in all the movies. We see it in all the TV show. He got a hunch that these guys were casing the joint for a robbery. And he went and he pushed them up against the wall and he patted them down. And I think he found some guns or something like that. I forget exactly what it was that he found. And ultimately, long story short, the U.S. Supreme Court found that there was not enough reasonable suspicion for him to detain those people, which I was talking about earlier, the reasonable suspicion. There was not enough reasonable suspicion for them or for this police officer to stop these guys just walking by a department store a few times was not enough to detain them and to pat them down. So now that's what this cop is talking about right now. And it's interesting because the guy that he's talking to, the suspect, is obviously savvy. You only get guys that are savvy who have been through the system a number of times. So like that means that this guy's been arrested a bunch, which doesn't surprise me just given the situation that's going on right now. But he's not wrong, and it's not a bad question to ask. And obviously this cop is a little tripped up by it. But he's still not going to be able to search the car yet. Yes, he has a reasonable suspicion to stay there and ask them some questions. But right now, he's not able to he doesn't have enough to make an arrest, which is what he wants to do. Really what he wants to do is get these guys out of the car and pat them down. I don't think that he has enough right now. That one speck on his pants, I don't think that's enough. If he pulls them out of the car at this point, when I push play, and pats him down and does end up finding drugs, if I was their attorney, I would file a motion to suppress and probably would prevail if I was in the state of Florida.
Mine.
Yeah. How long have you owned it?
I don't know, 6 months or so.
Okay. You let anybody borrow it?
No.
Copy. Why don't you step on out? Step out.
What, do I have a warrant or something?
No. I see dope in your car.
Where? That spec?
Turn-
That's not
turn-
enough.
come
I
on,
don't think that's
guys.
enough.
So right now you're just being detained.
Like I was saying earlier,
had
detention,
a
not
car
arrest, because he doesn't
stolen.
have enough to arrest him.
Okay,
Now, they
thanks.
can do this for when
One
they're doing a
detained.
detention.
All right,
You
let's
can
go
put
back
him in
and sit on my car.
handcuffs.
This clearly
You
it
can
looks
have
like
him
what
sit on the
appears to
car,
be
sit on the ground. You can even have him
heroin
sit in
in
the
your
police car.
door pocket, sir. So you have two different options. One is you can give me consent to search your vehicle. I can look at it. If it's not heroin, great. If it is, then we're gonna have problems. Or I can seize the vehicle.
Well,
It's-
you
it's
want to
up
look
to you.
in the door pocket?
It's up to you. I'd like to search your vehicle if you wouldn't let. If you
Okay. This is an interesting situation because consent is an exception, right? Consent is an exception to needing some kind of other reason to search. Like if he obviously saw, like, let's just say some used needles in the car, he wouldn't need to ask for consent to search because he would have enough of a reason to search the vehicle. He can see drug paraphernalia, what looks to be drug paraphernalia, which is kind of what he was getting at when he was talking about the pants and the crystalline substance. He can see the drug paraphernalia in the car. That's enough to search the whole vehicle for more drug paraphernalia and more drugs. That can expand the search to the interior of the car. He doesn't have that. This cop doesn't have that. And so what he's trying to do is get consent from this guy. Now, what gets really interesting here and what gets even weirder, adds another layer to it, is this under duress? If it's under duress, even if he says yes, that I consent to you searching the vehicle, then he's not, it's still a bad search. And so why is it a bad search is because if they search the vehicle illegally, which is kind of what I feel like is happening right now, it feels like we're moving in that direction. The cop is going to search the vehicle illegally. He'll find some heroin or some meth or some whatever their drug of choice might be. And the attorney who gets this hopefully will file a motion to suppress, and he'll say, listen, judge, the only reason they found these drugs is because of this illegal search. And if not for the illegal search, then no drugs would have been found. We call that the fruit of the poisonous tree. The search is poisonous, and the fruit that they found as a result of the poison is the drugs, and it can destroy an entire case for the state. It can destroy an entire case for this cop. I mean, there's been murders. There's been murders that have been overturned because of bad searches and seizures. It's very important that these cops do their jobs right. So right now, what we have is he's threatening this guy. He's saying we've got one of two ways that we can do it. Either you consent, which is like, how is that consent, right? Either you consent, or we're going to tow your car and we're going to impound it. Now, he hasn't given a good reason for why they would tow the car to the impound lot, because I do know that in the state of Florida, if they have to tow a vehicle for like benign reasons, for like non-criminal reasons, like let's just say that, I don't know, that this guy, he's not going to let this guy, because he doesn't have his license, he's not going to let him drive home with the vehicle. So they're going to tow it to the impound lot. Well, then they can do a search pursuant to the impound. That's one of the exceptions. They can do that. And then if they find any drugs, then boom, they've got him. But this other part with the consent, it's not going to be, in my opinion, it wouldn't be good consent.
You can look in the door pocket.
can I search your whole vehicle?
I have rights. What would the attorney advise me?
I'm not an attorney, and that's not my job. Yes or no?
Your attorney would advise you to be
It's
quiet.
really simple.
So he needs,
You can
He
look
needs to
in the
ask for
door
an attorney
pocket.
right
I don't care.
Okay.
Well, there's nothing in there but keys.
I highly doubt that. They're going to find something. There you go. That was quick.
Not heroin,
Is it weed?
but something else.
Nope. I thought it was weed for some reason. Yeah. Well, there you go.
Not just keys.
What did you find?
Let's go sit in my partner's car, and then I'm going to talk to you, okay?
So I think
Just
this is
the
a
baggie
very
alone
strong
kinda told
motion to
me
suppress
it's
right now.
possibly some illegal narcotic, and I thought maybe there was black tar heroin, and I didn't find heroin, but what I did find looks like meth. And then we're going to see if we get
So
presumptive
now he's got to
positive
test it
test.
because it could be
Drop
something
it in
else.
the
It could be
kit
sugar.
here.
It could be salt. It could be
Get all the way down to
baking
the bottom.
soda.
We're going to close it up, and then we're going to crush all these nodules.
So
And
we're
we've
going to
got
field test kit.
turned right away, this bluish color. So we've got presumptive positive test for methamphetamine.
There you go. The issue with that is, and that's the end of that clip. So the problem with those test kits is that they have a lot of false positives, and not only that, they also, if they're not taken care of in the proper way, then they can also not work the right way. You know, if they're exposed to humidity or things of that nature. And I live in Florida; it's a very, very humid state, so it's a real issue down here. But that does give them enough to make the arrest for whatever the illegal substance they think that it is. But I mean, when you see like, you know, those little baggies like that, I mean, all defense attorneys make those arguments about, well, we don't actually know what it is. And the test kits help connect that dot between the not knowing what it actually is. We all think it is what it is, but, you know, it helps kind of close that gap. So wrapping this one up, my final thoughts on this are that the police officers came initially into the area where the suspicious car, was based on a call made to 911 from what sounds like was one of the neighbors. So that would be most likely qualified as what we would call an anonymous tip. It's anonymous in the sense that we don't actually know who the person is making the call, but the tip said that they thought that the car was suspicious and that that there was drug sales going on. There wasn't anything more. If there was anything more, they didn't say it in the video. Upon investigation, once the police got there, they found out that the vehicle was indeed, in my opinion, parked in a suspicious location at a suspicious time, and there was two people in the vehicle. It was unusual. But then once they approached the vehicle, and as janky as the story was, he did give him a legitimate, hey, I have permission to be here. If he has permission to be there, he's got permission to be there. There's nothing, if you live in that neighborhood, or if you're a friend that was invited to that neighborhood, even if you're parked in kind of a weird way, it doesn't mean that you can just have the police coming up to you and start hemming you up. So while my gut says that he was lying, and I know that cop thought the same thing, I don't know if that's enough to pull him out of the car and search him. So then, even despite that, he asks him for his ID. He doesn't have his driver's license on him, which he can do. They're allowed to approach and ask for a driver's license. And if they don't have a driver's license, at least in the state of Florida, just not having it with you is not an arrestable offense. It's just a ticket. If his license was suspended, however, then that's an arrestable offense if he was potentially driving the vehicle. But that never came up. What he was doing was he was saying that like that one tiny little speck on his pants leg was drugs, which I don't think that any court is going to agree that that one tiny speck would be drugs, because it could be just so many different things. I think it's a right motion to suppress. And frankly, I think that after he pulled the guy out of the car, they went over and he talked to him and asked him for consent. And the reason he's asking him for consent is because the cop knows he doesn't have enough reasonable suspicion to search the vehicle. Just like he was saying with Terry, the Terry stop, the Terry case that I was talking about earlier, you got to have some actual facts. You can't just have that gut, deep in your bones feeling this guy's doing something illegal, which he was right. They had drugs on him, so like his gut was there. The hunch was there. It's just and if I'm not mistaken, it was the Terry case that said this. It was an inarticulable suspicion. His hunch didn't have anything to back it up. And so he pulls him out of the car. That's when he threatens him. I would argue that he threatened him. And the guy only gave him the consent because he felt like he was going to go to jail. He was going to go to jail if he didn't consent. So it's an interesting case. It would be an interesting motion to suppress. Is the consent legitimate or not? Because he does give him consent. I mean, the suspect does indeed give that police officer consent. So anyway, that's all for this one. If you like the video, leave me a like. If you really liked it, leave me subscribe. Chris Wagoner at Wagoner Law. If you ever in the Tampa Bay area and you need some help, give us a call, 727-685-8000, or check us out at wagonerlaw.com. See you later.